Hello, everyone. I'm featuring Karin today. She's joining us from San Diego, USA. Karin, welcome. We are very happy that you are on this platform.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Karin practices family law, but in fact, she specializes in cross-border law and she's had years of experience in it. So, Karin, do you want to tell a little bit more about what exactly are you doing?
Well, I work in a very specific field under the Hague Convention, and it works with cross-border international, many times custody orders start with it, but basically the premise for it in the area that I work in has to do with domestic violence.
Okay.
In each country, everybody sort of deals with it in their own particular cultural way and in their own legal system.
Right.
But in the cases that I work with, it's literally mostly mother and children. We do occasionally have some fathers that are fleeing from literally one country to another. So they're crossing international borders. And once they cross international borders, that becomes, as you would know, you're a lawyer, a jurisdictional issue.
Yes.
And that's when I start stepping in, because I have to balance laws between countries and find a common ground, first of all, between the laws, and then bring in large international conventions. Oh. So in my particular case, we changed international law under the Hague Convention for protection of domestic violence cases crossing international borders, which the original Hague Convention was developed to protect from kidnapping. However, it never addressed the issues of domestic violence. It merely addressed a very standardized issue of kidnapping and crossing borders and returning to original jurisdiction. So in 2002, we addressed that massive issue by defining a specific literal term called habitual residence. Yeah. And at that time, habitual residence had not been clearly defined, and it was a very vague area. So we used a case to prove that habitual residence was not simply going to someplace by choice, but also the ability to leave by choice. And if you were not able to leave and able to prove that you were unable to leave and had tried to leave, then habitual residence defined was changed. So then it became almost a hostage kidnapping situation, and that was domestic violence.
So, Karin, do you feel that post-COVID, these issues is increased, or it's just locally?
Oh no, it's increased around the world. We know that from statistics. Yeah. Many families obviously can't get out of their environment, and that particularly applies to women and children. Mm-hmm. Shelters have closed down. Access to justice systems have closed down. So yeah, it's really, really hit hard. Mm-hmm. And it's been a conversation that's, because of the pandemic, it's kind of fallen to the wayside. We are so absorbed with the COVID-19 and everything that's happened, which yes, of course we have to be, that other conversations has fallen to the wayside, and domestic violence and protection is one of them.
Yes, very true. So I know it is sad, at the same time your line of work is interesting. So do you want to talk about any memorable experiences you had with your clients you work with?
Well, most of them that stand out in my particular case is, unfortunately, the lack of knowledge that is around international kidnapping and Hague Convention cases, not only with lawyers themselves, but within the judicial systems. And most of the cases that I finally come to me have been through several lawyers, judicial systems, and pretty much come to me in a mess.
Yeah.
If you don't understand the international issues assigned to a Hague Convention, many judges and many lawyers will simply treat it as a custody case.
Yes.
And when you treat these cases simply as custody cases, you are denying protections that exist in them.
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you on this platform is because these cases is increased, and I felt that, we can reach out to as many women as possible, because I'm sure, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that, your voices will be heard by the ones who require your assistance. So my next question would be that, what do you think has been your most significant accomplishment till date?
To me, the most significant accomplishment was changing the Hague Convention itself, the Hague under kidnapping, to allow an addendum of domestic violence protection.
Yeah.
Previous to this, the Hague Convention, it did not allow for citizenship one. For example, if a woman from India was living in US or anywhere, had a child and fled, and the child and the mother were both born in India, but they were temporarily living in the US, so they'd lived there for several years, and they returned home to India. Under the Hague Convention, India would send them back to the US.
Yeah.
So citizenship was irregardless. Whether the child was born, it didn't matter. And this was huge because in many of these cases, women were putting their lives on the line literally to escape from one, a severe domestic violence situation, and two, the country.
Yes.
Because they couldn't find justice or protection under the legal system at that time.
Yeah.
So by trying to return home, they were looking for one, safety, and two, some level of legal protection that they believed they would be allowed in their home countries. Under the old Hague Convention, this was not allowed. Literally, the Hague Convention, for example, in the case I just gave you, the girl from India would, by her own government and her own police, be put on a plane and returned to the US or whichever country she'd fled from.
Right.
Which not only put her back in the original situation, but into a situation that was even more critical.
Yeah.
We had a percentage of 80 to 90% of women that had been returned that were killed.
Okay, that's sad.
Yeah. So changing that to create an addendum for domestic violence protection then allowed for the first time women to be heard in court in the country that they had fled to versus from.
Right.
Which suddenly gave them a voice.
Yeah.
And in domestic violence cases, the most important thing that there is for the woman and the child to have a voice.
Yeah.
And many times also, we have created an opening area where the child can be heard.
Yeah.
Again, in many countries and many legal systems, a child does not have a voice.
Yeah.
Now, under the Hague Convention, legal domestic violence, the child is also allowed to have a voice, which then makes the case even stronger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that would be the biggest thing that we've done.
Very important work for, I think, women around the world. And I'm extremely happy that you are on this platform. So Karin, can we talk about your strengths? Because I think women would love to hear about your strengths.
I don't know. I think my strengths and my weaknesses are one and the same. I'm stubborn.
You need to be.
Yes.
You need to be.
I don't know. It's hard to say. In these cases, I think empathy.
Okay.
I think my own background and things that I have seen and done, and that gives me the ability to be very empathetic and understanding with my clients.
Mm.
I am a very firm believer that I don't know everything. You have a client that will come to you, a woman and a child that come to you, and you have the paperwork, you have the basic story. But it is my firm belief that the people who come to me, they're in charge of their story. I'm not in charge of their story. I'm there to help them.
Yeah.
So I can offer them options like this is A, B, C. A is probably the easiest way. C is the hardest way. But I don't know enough of anything beyond what they've told me in the paperwork to understand their choices. Mm-hmm. So to me, whether they pick A, B, or C of their options, it's my belief that I need to follow them and walk in their shoes.
Yeah.
And that comes from my personal experience.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. So Can we talk about any challenges you faced recently post-COVID in your work?
Yes, it's actually hard to talk to people. People don't feel in domestic violence. First of all, technology is not always our friend.
Yeah.
Because the abuser can be in control of the technology.
Yeah.
Which is another reason that the domestic violence is skyrocketing.
Yeah.
That they cannot access their computers. Everything is compromised by the person who is in control of the situation. And it's not necessarily the woman or the child or whoever the case may be is being abused.
Right.
So that has been the biggest challenge, actually being able to communicate.
Okay. And how have you been able to overcome those challenges, if you may?
Sometimes, depending on the situation and access, you can, meet somewhere outside, that might be going for a walk or going for coffee and meet them somewhere outside. Or alternatively, they have a friend who has a friend, and the communication becomes almost third degree and things like that. But sometimes that's better than nothing.
Yeah. From what I understand, that I'm sure that all your clients are not based out of US, they're spread around the world.
No, they're worldwide, yes.
Yeah. So before the pandemic, how did you deal with those cases?
Cases are referred to me, and I take them case by case basis.
Okay.
So if I
how do you communicate with your client if they are not based out of US?
Previously, we'll start by communicating by phone, by whoever's referred them. I will then ask them to give me all the notes and the case notes and all the legal paperwork. I'll review it, and then I will decide if I accept the case or not. At which point, at some stage, I will go to where they are.
Okay. All right. So there was, at least you were able to have a physical meeting before you took it further. Now that has become very challenging due to the pandemic. I understand.
Very much so. Yes, very much so. And like I said, more for the people than it is for me.
Yes, I agree. So, Karin, I'm so thankful to you for taking out time and being on this platform. I'm sure the women from around the world would love to hear about what you have to say.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to talk to you.
Same here, Karin. Thank you so much.